What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a Tuesday here on the Damage Report. I am not Gina Idarola. That is also not his name. But I am Francesca Fiorentini in for John Idarola, who was in New York accepting a Webby on behalf of this show and all the people who watch and work on it. So thank you so much again for those votes. We got a great show. We got a lot of news. We got ground to cover. We got stories from yesterday about CEO cats. We've got other corporate stories. Should there be a quota for how many women or people of color should be on a corporate board? I'm curious to know what you guys think. And with me is Mr. Dan Evans, Dan from the internet, formerly of TDR. Dan, how are you?
I am wonderful. I am surprised, but also honored to be getting to join you today. This is going to be a fun show.
Don't be surprised. I sort of just like, yes, Dan will do. Let's use him. He will be good. Dan, there's a lot to get to. There's a lot of sad news, serious news. Maybe we'll lighten it up a little bit later. But are you ready?
Let's do it.
Hell yeah. Actually, JK, before we get into it, everybody like and share this stream. You know what to do. Don't act like you don't know what is going on. You're liking the stream, you're sharing the stream, you're listening to the podcast, and you're giving the podcast 5 stars, Damage Report. And just in case you don't already know, if you are in North Carolina, Oregon, Kentucky, or Pennsylvania, you've got primaries today. So get your ass out there and vote. And there will be coverage, TYT special coverage tonight of those races, starting at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, featuring Cenk, JR, and Anna Kasparian, of course. And then Ida Rodriguez is gonna be there, so do not miss that coverage. And with that, let's get into this. So the country is, and some Republicans seem to be maybe learning a lesson around some of the racist conspiracy theories that they've been spouting in the wake of the Buffalo massacre that left 10 people dead and wounded 13, which was again carried out by an 18-year-old radicalized white nationalist, self-avowed white nationalist. Specifically, that theory that is sticking among some Republicans and among the country at large is the idea of the Great Replacement theory, whereby people of color are replacing white people, and for some reason that's being orchestrated. And there's a lot of criticism falling on one lawmaker who actually happens to be representing a district that's not so far from Buffalo. So upstate New York Representative Elise Stefanik, the 3rd ranking member of the House GOP, has faced the most criticism for pushing the Great Replacement theory since the shooting. A series of paid Facebook ads her campaign ran last fall explicitly used Great Replacement theory rhetoric. So just take a look at some of those ads. Here we've got Elise Stefanik on Facebook saying, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Nancy Pelosi are attempting to flood our voter rolls with 11 million new voters by giving illegal immigrants amnesty. And then stop election insurrection. That's cute, because there was another election insurrection. And here you go, here's another one. Radical Democrats are planning their most aggressive move yet, a permanent election insurrection. Their plan to grant amnesty to 11 million illegal immigrants will overthrow our current electorate and create a permanent liberal majority in Washington. So that is exactly and precisely the kind of conspiracy theories that the shooter in Buffalo was espousing himself. And he believed that it was his job to kill as many black people on that day. And in general, the conclusion of the Great Replacement theory is to kill people of color, to actually act on that. It's not just this is happening. That is the natural conclusion that has been espoused by white nationalists on the internet. And so you might think that a lawmaker once called out on this, especially in the wake of a tragedy or a massacre that is tragic, that maybe one of those politicians would back off of that rhetoric. Instead, nope. Representative Stefanik, Elise Stefanik, just doubled down. So here she is tweeting yesterday, the American people are smart. It's a fact that Democrats have been explicitly pushing for amnesty for years, specifically for political and electoral purposes. That just happened. Dan, I mean, God, you tell me, man, do you see broad amnesty being offered to 11 million undocumented people at the top of the Democrats list right now?
It's one of Joe Biden's major policy proposals, along with canceling student loans and universal health care. We all have known, we've covered this for a long time, that Republicans live in a fantasy world. They have their own media entities and they believe whatever they are being spoon fed. What's changing right now is that what used to be on the outskirts of the conservative movement, still very much prominent. Your Steve Bannons, who at the time were very connected to Donald Trump. A lot of these folks have been pushing this great replacement theory. And I love what you just said there, because this is, a theory, it's a term, like critical race theory, great replacement theory. We all know these things, but outside of theory in practice, what this means is that Black people, people of color, honestly, it even gets down to women at a certain point, are in this secret mix, a secret plot to ultimately take over and brown American society or brown European society. The answer, once you jump out of theory to stop that, always ends up being violence. And when we expect our elected leaders to be a little more cautious and careful around these things, not doing stochastic terrorism and stoking up these fears and resentments, completely baseless, by the way, we would at least expect them to have some conscience, ideally, to be able to say, no, the buck stops with here. I'm not pushing for like racist theories, but Trump taught them that this stuff works, this stuff wins you voters, and you can use those voters to entrench power to do what you really want to do, which is silence the votes of Black people who can legally vote in this country from actually expressing themselves politically, because that's helped the Democratic Party a lot. So This is all a big picture thing for Republican takeover and control. That's scary.
Absolutely, and we'll get to some of the Republicans who are like, hey, remember when we just did this on the low? Let's do it on the low again. You're doing it on the high, and I want to change that. See, here's my perspective as someone who's mixed race in terms of like, white people being replaced and disappearing. Nah, the census says actually there are more mixed people than there are POC. And what does that mean? So if you were to take a white supremacist view of that mixing, then automatically me as a Chinese Italian person becomes Chinese only, right? There's not another white person, there's another Asian person in this country, which is utter racist nonsense. And it is that one drop rule theory that goes back to slavery and being 3/5 of a person. So let's talk about like also the way the liberal media in a way, liberal media in quotes, but like the CNNs, the MSNBCs, and people who regurgitate stats around demographic changes as if there are suddenly more people. Nah, the fastest growing group is actually just mixed people, and they're all mixed with white. White people are just setting up franchises, y'all. Like there's just more white people out there. I don't know why we never see it that way.
You're absolutely right. I'll say one other thing, because Cliff Albright, who is one of the founders of Black Voters Matter, said something on this that was really akin to this, because there is a history of this. America was founded on great replacement theory, quoting him, Europeans literally replaced indigenous nations and took their land. All right, so this has been something in history. We've tried to go around this and saying, nope, we have a democracy. We'll eventually let women and Black people and people of color vote. But now you're looking at the removal of those rights for the same ultimate manifest destiny goal.
Yeah. Well, Elise Stefanik is continuing to double down on her idea that yes, there is a theory, there is a plan to replace Republican voters with Democratic voters who happen to be brown. But she's getting called on it by other Republicans. Now, of course, we got to look at who these Republicans are and how they're viewed by their own party, but at least some Republicans are. So Adam Kinzinger, Representative Kinzinger, writes on Twitter, did you know Elise Stefanik pushes white replacement theory? The number 3 in the House GOP, Liz Cheney, got removed for demanding the truth, and GOP leaders should be asked about this. So this is a direct call out, which I gotta say, as someone who doesn't see this nearly enough on the Democratic side, is kind of happy to see that Republicans are doing it, even if they are in the minority and they will take even more flack than they already have. But here he's saying, look, Kevin McCarthy has to answer for this. Elise Stefanik has to answer for this. Meanwhile, you iced out Liz Cheney because she dared call the January 6th insurrection exactly that. And then Liz Cheney herself went even further in not just singling out Elise Stefanik, but really the GOP line as a whole. writing on Twitter, the House GOP leadership has enabled white nationalism, white supremacy, and anti-Semitism. I mean, there's no pulling punches, Liz. History has taught us that what begins with words ends in far worse. GOP leaders must renounce and reject these views and those who hold them. This is a Cheney, and so my heart is pulled in a multitude of directions. I'm very good with words on Tuesdays. But man, I have not seen a Republican in the last, 5 years, current sitting Republican, not former I want a job at MSNBC Republican, deliberately call this out. I mean, Dan, what do you think? Is this, are they is Kevin McCarthy gonna come around?
I mean, if we end up seeing Kevin McCarthy on CNN, we will rue the day of those words. But no, I think that Liz Cheney is definitely in a position to where she's been so ostracized by her own party that she has no incentive to then turn around and go, okay, I'm gonna fall in line with the Trump base. Whether it's for her own political aspirations or otherwise, she happens to be taking this kind of principled position. And we definitely hope that other, again, Republicans start to call out their party. But what we've seen is, like you're right, Francesca, the Democrats rarely ever call out members of their own party because the idea of applying any type of pressure to your cabal of wealthy politicians is a problem on the Democratic Party. Yeah. On the Republican side, they tear each other down so they can get more people within their extreme right-wing coalition into power so they can do what they really want to. And so they're going really hard against Liz Cheney. I don't know if it's gonna work out very well, but I do appreciate on that level that there is some fighting within the Republican Party over how to reconcile with this. I just know that usually this happens for this lasts for about a week and then the party's back falling in line with all the terrible things they're doing.
Yeah. Cheney Harris or Harris Cheney 2028.
That's the unity ticket we need.
Oh yeah, let's just bring everybody together. Look, I gotta say, kudos to Cheney. Run as an independent. I don't know. Do you remake just or take the Republican Party and let us start a different thing? Something's gotta happen. But I did want to point out, and this is really scary, that in a recent Associated Press NORC poll, 1/3 of Americans actually do believe in the Great Replacement theory, and almost half of Republicans believe there's, quote, a group of people in the country who are trying to replace native-born Americans with immigrants who agree with their political view. Now that statement in and of itself should probably be parsed. There's a group of people in this country, read the Jews, who are trying to replace, quote, native-born Americans. Are we talking about Native Americans? I don't think so. So I have a little bit of problems with the way that poll maybe was posed, but it is frightening. And as Danny were saying, it's not fringe anymore. And I think we're finally coming to terms with that.
Yeah, and I really hope that the Republican Party can see that, okay, this is not becoming fringe anymore. This has the potential to get very violent very quickly. And who knows, maybe we can. I mean, Republicans have been bragging about the Democrats are bleeding Latino voters, they're bleeding Black voters, they're coming to our party. And I do know a lot of these conservative people of color. I have a really strong feeling that if you start actually taking the Great Replacement theory seriously, they will be overplaying their hand, and many of the same people they will need in a lot of these iffy places like Florida and Texas coming soon, they may not be able to rely on those people of color voting for them, because if they actually see that they are going to be voting for a party that's going to very closely try to kill them and kill their families.
Yes.
I don't know, it's really hard for people to vote for that. You can abstract things and go, oh, I'm being taxed too much. Oh, I can't do my business or whatever. No, they're coming to kill your family. I'm pretty sure people are gonna see that and not vote for that party. Or at least I hope, because again, we've been let down to get to this point.
I think that's really important. And I think it's important to say that the fact that the targets, and this is really painful, but the fact that the targets were African-American and not necessarily like immigrants, right, parses this issue, or doesn't parse the issue. I think it creates a natural solidarity of like what happens in the El Paso shooting to what happens in a synagogue to what happens, in a Sikh community or the Muslim community can also happen to obviously African Americans, and has, and will. And so you're absolutely right. Like the ways that Republicans often try to divide voters and say like, well, we should all be against illegals or we should all be against Muslims. It's like, no. We understand where your ideology is leading. So I think there's a really, really good point.
Instead, Gendron's letter is a rambling pastiche of slogans and internet memes, some of which flatly contradict one another. The document is not recognizably left-wing or right-wing. It's not really political at all. The document is crazy. It's the product of a diseased and organized mind. At one point, Gendron suggests that Fox News is part of some global conspiracy against him. He writes like the mental patient he is, disjointed, irrational, paranoid. Now that's true, not that it makes the atrocities he committed easier to bear. If your daughter was murdered on Saturday in Buffalo, you wouldn't care why the killer did it or who he voted for. But the truth about Peyton Gendron does tell you a lot about the ruthlessness and dishonesty of our political leadership. Within minutes of Saturday's shooting, before all of the bodies of those 10 murdered Americans had even been identified by their loved ones, professional Democrats had begun a coordinated campaign to blame those murders on their political opponents. They did it, they said immediately. Peyton Gendron was the heir to Donald Trump, they told us. Trumpism committed mass murder in Buffalo. And for that reason, it followed logically, we must suspend the First Amendment.
Oh, buddy, and yet you're still on TV. Look at you. There you are, expressing your First Amendment all over everybody. That's Tucker Carlson reporting on the manifesto that was left behind by the 18-year-old shooter in Buffalo, which espoused many of the same ideas. In fact, as we looked at, pretty much lifted passages, not only from people like the Christchurch shooter who killed 51 people in New Zealand, but Tucker Carlson himself, not only espousing the Great Replacement Theory, which Carlson has discussed at length on his own show, but even framing things in the same way. Let's just pull up this graphic really quickly. We don't have to read it all, but the open questioning about why is diversity our strength? Tucker Carlson says it, and then the mass shooter writes it, right? So here's Carlson, like, is it true that we're allowed to question diversity? And then you have Peyton Gendron, the shooter, saying, why is diversity our greatest strength? These are the same echoes of the same exact thing. And yet here you have Carlson, and he is saying, this is a crazy person. This is not about left or right. He continued on to say, because one mentally ill teenager murdered strangers, you can't be allowed to express your political views out loud. That is what they're telling you. That is what they want to tell you for a long time. But Saturday's massacre gives the pretext and justification. So here he is already making himself the victim. Dan, thoughts on this mass deflection that he's doing? I mean, what did we expect from him, I guess?
Yeah, of course not. The deflection, of course, is going to come. The don't blame me, blame the left. He's hitting these same talking points almost like, dog whistles, because they are dog whistles. And I think this is a playbook that's happened in the right wing before. You had different shooters and different manifestos. And of course, you can't take all of these people extremely seriously because they're unhinged in that way. But they are reacting to culture. They're reacting to these things. Can we prove?
Dan, I think I lost you.
Oh man.
I think you're back. Keep going. All right, we lost Dan for just a second, but we will get him back. He is from the internet, so he better have the internet. But you back?
Oh, okay. Yes, so sorry about that. But essentially, Tucker Carlson's playbook of denying all of this stuff that happens. Of course, we don't have like a Nielsen rating box at all of these like mass shooters' houses to be able to tell, 745, he was watching the Tucker Carlson program. But no, this Great Replacement Theory stuff, it goes viral offside of just watching Fox News. And a lot of people see this and consume it. And of course, if you are unhinged, you can take it in a direction that leads to you justifying the murder of Black people and other people of color in other cases in other places. Just this weekend, there was a shooting at a Thai church in Orange County, California, that also seems to be very racially motivated as well. So this denial is not only so obvious, but Fox News' lawyers, when they have to end up defending Tucker Carlson for the stupid things he says, will always emphasize the fact that he is an entertainment program and that he shouldn't be taken seriously. So if they're going to use that argument and then let Tucker Carlson spew what he's saying on TV all the time, then it's very clear, at least it has to be clear to us who are really reading between the lines in this, that Tucker Carlson knows what he's doing, but he's going to try to hide the deck a little bit because ultimately this is going to help the people he wants to be in power retain in power.
Yeah, and I just want to quickly, the shooting in Orange County, it was a Taiwanese church, and it seems to be a Chinese man who carried it out. Different race politics involved, still bigotry, still awful. Last thing on Tucker, he's basically blaming the fact that we talk about race for this shooting. The fact that so essentially that we don't live in a colorblind society, and that why are you even bringing it up? It's the CRT argument. He writes, or he says, race politics always makes us hate each other, and always in a very predictable way. How could you be surprised when identity politics leads to white identity politics? You could not be surprised. You did it, and it was always going to happen. And then what happens next? Nothing good. Race politics is a sin. Race politics always leads to violence and death. This is the most victim blaming stuff I've ever seen. You are the reason. You're the reason that me bringing this up every single night that like people of color are replacing white voters. No, that's not on me. You made me do this by simply existing. You made me do this by what? Our colonizers like inventing race categories and subjugating an entire people and population based on the color of their skin. Oh yeah, no, definitely the oppressed made the oppressor do all that. This is the politics they're pushing. Dan, just don't talk about it. Just don't talk about it. And none of this violence would happen.
It's sickening unbelievably because Tucker Carlson is one of the biggest, probably the biggest in any given night news person, but the people who have smaller audiences, but still very dedicated audiences on the internet, where a lot of this more fringe stuff is happening, they're gonna take cues from Tucker Carlson and they're gonna go even further. And again, once this keeps happening, they're going to gaslight the entire population and say, oh, the people who are pointing out that Newsmax and Fox News and all these other extreme right-wingers who are not extreme anymore, they're now the mainstream of the party. Oh, the fact that we have them on record talking about the Great Replacement Theory and all these different things, that's wrong. They're actually trying to get rid of free speech. In reality, we're the victims here. They're gonna keep running this playbook while people die. Democrats need to do something about this.
Absolutely. All right, we got to take our first break, but more on the other side of this. Hang on. Okay, for Jessica Fiorentini here, back filling in for John Iadarola on the Damage Report here with Dan Evans, Dan from the internet. Dan, let's get back in to some news.
God bless.
So a California law requiring at least one woman to sit on corporate boards has been struck down by a judge. The law was expected to be struck down or stricken down, or however you want to say that past participle. A Los Angeles judge ruled that the landmark was unconstitutional, the landmark law. So Maureen Duffy Lewis, yes, another woman. This is what equality is. They giveth and they taketh. A judge with the Los Angeles County Superior Court ruled Friday that the Senate Bill 826 violates the Equal Protection Clause of California's Constitution. Passed in 2018, the law required public companies based in the state to have at least one woman on the board by the end of 2019. Just one. But of course, as happens around the country, there are a lot of conservative judicial groups. They are the ones behind things like our current Supreme Court. So a conservative legal group, Judicial Watch, had challenged the law, claiming it was illegal to use taxpayer funds to enforce a law that violates the Equal Protection Clause of the California Constitution by mandating a gender-based quota. The decision comes just over a month after another Los Angeles judge found that a California law mandating that corporations diversify their boards with members from certain racial, ethnic, or LGBT groups was unconstitutional as well. The corporate diversity legislation was a sequel to the law requiring women on corporate boards. The judge in the previous case ruled in favor of Judicial Watch and the same plaintiffs without holding a trial. So set it up, knocked it down. Dan, your thoughts on this, the illegality of having diversity or requiring a small amount of diversity on a corporate board?
Yeah, I think this is a really important lesson for the left, one of many, which is that the judicial system, the legal system, is not our friend. It is not, it is by definition, and I have a lot of leftist lawyer friends who would largely agree with me on this, but that's why they're lawyers. They're trying to change things around a little bit. But by definition, the judicial system and the legal system holds conservative frameworks. They take old laws, they use old laws as the principal way they make new laws and enforce new laws. And so in order to get new laws to be made, you have to actually work with the politicians in that case. And I understand why people kind of get sick of that, because having the Democrats do anything is pretty impossible, even at a state level, because they're just not listening to their constituents. And so you do other avenues, like pursuing it on the legal angle. But I saw this in a different space, in the, I can't say this word on YouTube, but like in a industry of a plant that is legal in most places, they tried to make it so that people of color could grow this plant and use it and actually benefit from the business of it. Mm-hmm. That law was struck down in California because California has an anti-affirmative action law that makes it so you can't make these special laws that give special benefits to groups that have been historically discriminated against. So to me, this legal ruling is absolutely no surprise. California seems like it's really liberal, but you can't do things like this a lot of times because of the affirmative action statute. But again, because the law is not meant to be progressive most of the time. It takes large movements and large social changes that we read about in history books and then ban those history books in Florida for this kind of change to happen.
I mean, and that's the interesting thing is like, it's the same thing, this kind of representation. And to be honest with you, like, look, corporate boards are not really the happiest places on earth. These are not places where good things generally happen. But that being said, they are important places. And so no one can make the argument to me, even if I'm a huge critic of capitalism / an anti-capitalist, that it's not important to have a certain amount of diversity representative of a population on these boards, and they are, again, publicly held. So I understand that it's like, okay, what are we doing here? It does seem a little bit like, we're getting specific quotas, but no, women, people of color, hell, lump them all into the marginalized category. It's a huge group of people, and the same with Congress, the same with our lawmakers. At what point are we having minority rule? If we're against minority rule in our democracy, we should be against minority rule in the corporate world as well, considering how much control corporations, like it or not, have over our everyday lives. So here you have this ruling. And again, I mean, affirmative action in California is legal, but I feel like the Judicial Watch is coming for it next. This is clearly, if you can do this on corporate boards, you could do this in universities. And of course, people try. Pretty much every couple of years to overturn any kind of efforts for affirmative action. I wanted to go to the results of the couple years that this actually was in effect in California. So according to research by the nonprofit 50/50 Women on Boards, the law achieved impressive results. So the number of board seats in California held by women has doubled since the law was enacted in 2018, which again, one woman qualifies as like meeting the standards. At that point in time, women only held 16% of board seats among California's public companies in the Russell 3000. As a result of the law, at least as of year-end 2021, women now occupy 32% of those seats, which is higher than the national average of 27. Overall, in terms of underrepresented groups, on corporate boards like this. So directors from underrepresented groups are 17% of board seats, up from 14% in 2020. Women of all races have made gains. They now account for 27%, as we just went into. So there's minimal, just minimal movement on that. But again, 70% of all underrepresented groups is still a lack of representation. And again, this is at a time when you have massive profits for corporations and essential workers, predominantly people of color and women specifically, who are being, denied their own labor rights every single day. So it's an interesting call. Again, I think, Dan, you're right. If we can't get it done here in California, and knowing how conservative the judicial system is anyway, it is going to take a mass movement.
I will say one last point here, because I've always liked the way you do this. You just take it out of theory and into real practice, right? So what they're actually saying is, we don't expect boards of companies to find qualified women to be on the boards. Right. That's a ridiculous statement. That's absolutely insane. These companies don't function without some of the smartest, most intelligent, hardworking women at these places. It makes all the sense in the world that they should have minimum one board seat, let alone how much it makes sense to be. That isn't happening, again, not because there's some lack of highly qualified women. It's happening because of inherent sexism. I don't think you use the legal system to solve sexism and things like that. But I mean, we also have to use every avenue we can, because that's politics here.
Right, and if and when there is parity, right? White men will be straight white men will be like, this is oppression. You know what I mean? Again, the corporate world mirrors our political world. Every time there's an attempt at equality, suddenly it feels like oppression. Why does equality feel like oppression to people in power? In what world? Why is it white men can't get jobs? There's a quota of one woman. They're not looking at my job application right. Come on. It is a very pivotal time for corporations to decide which side they are on in terms of reproductive rights, as the leaked Supreme Court decision shows that we are on the precipice of potentially obliterating Roe v. Wade and the right to get a safe abortion. And the president of PlayStation, that's right, the video gaming company, has boldly made his views clear that he doesn't want his employees to talk about reproductive rights. So in an email seen by Bloomberg, PlayStation president Jim Ryan didn't take a stance on abortion rights, instead writing that the company and its community are, quote, multifaceted and diverse and hold many different viewpoints. He wrote that we owe it to each other and to PlayStation's millions of users to respect differences of opinion among everyone in our internal and external communities. Respect does not equal agreement, but it's fundamental to who we are as a company and as a valued global brand. Ding, little A. I'm just going to accept the diversity of people dying because they can't get an abortion or reproductive rights. Anyway, that wasn't the end of the email, however. In fact, the more eyebrow-raising part was that while he was asking PlayStation workers, employees to just kind of shut up about reproductive rights, and that PlayStation's probably not going to take a stance on this, he then goes on for a very extended time to talk about his kitty cats. That's right. Ryan then went on to write an email that he would, quote, like to share some lighthearted news to help inspire everyone be mindful of having balance that can help ease the stress of an uncertain world. Saying that it was recently his two cats' first birthday, and elaborating over the next few paragraphs about his cats' birthday cakes, their noises, and his desire to one day get a dog. What? Oh, excuse me? So internally, some women wrote that they felt that their rights were being disrespected or trivialized by this message. One employee said that they've never been so mad about a cat birthday before. As someone who doesn't know their cat's birthday because I adopt/save kitty cats, I agree. I'm usually I'd be down. If I knew my cat's birthday, it would be on. There would be I would rent a clown, a bounce house, everything made out of catnip. But this is just so tone deaf and upsetting. I don't know. Could we expect more from the CEO of PlayStation? Dan?
I I hope not. I mean, to get the obvious out of the way, you and I sometimes take a lot of crap for being avowed cat people and cat lovers and cat adopters. But no, I also feel like, just tangentially, I think a cat would be the least caring about having a birthday party. They would be like super chill with it, and then like, okay, I'm done. This is too many people. I'm out of it. But no, like at the end of the day, it's, thank you for getting the cat B-roll. At the end of the day, we that is such a trivializing of the issue, and it is male fragility kind of immediately at play. Because, oh, I don't want to talk about this. I literally won't even mention the matter at hand, the topic at hand that is controversial, let's say, or touches a political end or bound to me. I'm not going to acknowledge the legitimate fear some people have. I mean, I'm not one to cheer corporations, but there are some really large tech companies, not Sony PlayStation large, but bigger, who are saying, listen, we will pay for our workers if they have to travel outside of the state, knowing that there is a conservative legal front heading straight for them. They're willing to take that public scrutiny, potential legal scrutiny, to make sure their employees feel safe. Contrast that with not even acknowledging why a lot of your employees don't feel safe right now, and then moving on and peppering it by saying, oh, I don't want to talk about this uncomfortable thing. Let's instead talk about my cat's birthday and let's emphasize that. It's important for men in these positions to also speak up, because this isn't just a women's reproductive health rights issue or people who give birth like reproductive like health rights issue. This is about all of us. This is about everything going together. And You can't do these. I think we're way past these times for these milquetoast CEO statements. The fact that he then decides to, okay, let's just talk about my cat instead, because this is the most important thing to do with my business or the news today. Adds an extra level of insult to injury.
Absolutely, and it reminds me of some of the ways that corporations really bent over backwards to, even on a symbolic level, but some in a more structural level, respond to the George Floyd murder and the massive protests and the Black Lives Matter movement. And it reminds me of how actually weakened the reproductive rights movement has been, and how much we need a militant, radical, inclusive, feminist movement. Again, like you're saying, with everyone involved, so we can bring these CEOs, I mean, straight up to heel. I'm like, we have to bring them under our thumb to be like, nah, man, it's not okay to actually not take a side on this. This is a side of bodily autonomy and freedom and rights, or not. So which side are you on? And I want to see overtures to women, to people who can reproduce, to anyone. I mean, I want to see overtures about like contraception. That is the response that I'm looking for a giant corporation like PlayStation in this moment. And it also, again, there's a tinge of like women don't play video games misogyny going on here. Like come on. And we're talking about the employees, the women who do work for PlayStation, the people who play PlayStation. Like, what, this is not the 90s, man. Like Gamergate's done, bro. Gamergate's done. I think the men won that one, but anyway, I'm kidding. The truth is out there, damn it. And Congress is gonna get to the bottom of it. Maybe they can figure out their laptops. Yes, we're talking about UFOs. And for the first time in over half a century, Congress is setting to hold public hearings on UFO sightings and the security risks associated with unidentified flying objects. And I can't wait to see the witnesses that come forward and swear they were touched by maybe an angel. No, the hearing is scheduled to begin at 9 p.m. Eastern today, and will focus on government reports about unidentified aerial phenomenon, or UAP, or OWAP, which is like a WAP but in space. Observed by US military officials over the years. CNN notes that the government recorded more than 140 UAP incidents in a report released last year, and that the Department of Defense released video footage of flying objects that move through the air in erratic fashion with speed and maneuverability despite having no detectable means of propulsion. Yikes, that is a WAP. The hearing will be held by the House Intelligence Committee's Counterterrorism, Counterintelligence, and Counterproliferation Subcommittee, and it shall be chaired by Congressman Andre Carson under the Secretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, Ronald Moultrie, and Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence, Scott Bray, are all expected to testify in the hearing that will be held in public and in the closed door. Classified hearing will follow after. Oh man, see, so the good stuff is gonna happen later. Look, they're televising the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. Can you please get some ratings for like these congressional hearings? Dan, it's about damn time. What do you think? More than half a century, more than 50 years.
The government has been, they lie to us about everything. That's kind of like how we cover things in politics, or they keep away certain truths. But I think one of those classic ones that really animates even non-political people, which I think is a great thing. Let's expand the universe of political freaks like us. And so to speak, literally expanding the universe by looking at all these different UFO sightings and really bring them to context. And I think, again, it's really easy to say, why does this matter? There's so many other pressing things going on. But I do really believe that, this is stuff we don't know. It's cool, it's sciencey, it's fun, it's interesting. But I'm less curious about like the inevitable things about like, okay, how are we gonna go to war with them? How are we gonna be able to shoot them down? All this other different stuff. But I am curious to see what the government is willing to open up about, what they're willing to actually say, if anything is. I don't know if that's gonna create like a mass wild panic if it's like, oh yeah, Joe Biden is an alien. He is just a really good, like, we've been doing this whole long. Congratulations, this is a science experiment kind of deal. Of course, I'm kidding, but like,
one of them is
any of the real deal.
I mean, they're here. It's one of them. Like, it's either Ted Cruz, or Lindsey Graham, or even Biden, or Trump himself, or all of them.
The government's already been taken over by aliens. That's the long game right there.
I think, look, 140 UAP, that's a lot. And again, I sort of jokingly said, who's gonna testify? These are Director of Naval Intelligence. These are like defense intelligence folks. These are people who would know. This is stuff that's been funneled up to them. These are testimonies that they have not been able to give for years and years and years. This is stuff that has not been unsealed, I think, even to Congress for a long time. And remember, for all y'all who were like, I hate Hillary Clinton, she was gonna unseal some UFO stuff. So maybe rethink that, okay? Also, Supreme Court noms, kind of important as we've seen. But I think it's imminent. I think it's super fascinating. Like, it's incredible that there could be that kind of technology. And also, really, what are they doing here? And can they take me with them to their planet, which I only assume is better, but what if it kind of sucks? You know what I mean? Like, what if there is no water, or like human life can't survive? And can they just take the baddies? Like, can you just take Bezos? He's already trying to get to you. I have a lot of questions. I do want to play this video though, because as Congress is trying to do this hearing, they have some video, and just to show you how terrestrial both this Earth is, obviously, and our technology, but also Congress. Here is them trying to pause a video at the right moment to see the UAP, but they can't quite get it.
Okay, if you could stop that frame. No, it's not the one.
Alexei, just push play. Everyone will see coming up right here is a never mind. Now backwards. Spherical object right here, zoomed by the window, right in this area right there. There we go. Could you see that part right there again? Going by. I think we're having a hard time stopping it tonight.
They can't see that. They don't even have their glasses on. We can't see that. And we can see fine. It's just, that's so sad. Like, it makes me sad that, like, we can't even pause stuff in the right moment, let alone, I don't know, fly through the air without any apparent propulsion or gas.
It's not inspiring a lot of confidence that these are the folks that have been anointed, not even barely even elected, but like just they're in the right committees, they're in the right places, they have the right staffs to basically go, yeah, we're gonna figure out aliens for mankind. For the human race, we're on the case. As soon as we learn how to export PDFs and pause videos on the internet, we're gonna figure out this alien thing. We're getting to the bottom of it. Bring a bucket and a mop for these UAPs.
Yeah, is it a GIF or a GIF? I'm on the UFOs. We're gonna make a GIF of the UFOs. But very curious to see what happens and some of that testimony. So maybe we'll keep on covering that on the show. So a model named Yumi Nu became the first Asian plus size model to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and the internet had a freak out. And the reason that the all meat homophobe Jordan Peterson is over my shoulder is because he freaked out the most. So first, here is a picture of Yumi Nu. Again, in my opinion, looking pretty damn fly. There she is. And Jordan Peterson decided to weigh in, as many on the internet did. People were praising, people were upset. Jordan Peterson, very upset. He writes, sorry, not beautiful. And no amount of authoritarian tolerance is going to change that. What? What, dude? Authoritarian tolerance? Just amazing use of words. Right wing Cope on Twitter said it best. Authoritarianism is when there's thick woman on magazine cover. LMAO. That is exactly what he is saying. Like, I believe that Hitler instituted a policy of loving all body shapes and types. You know, that is one of the pillars of a white ethno state, is also loving all bodies, as long as they're the Aryan race. What the hell? Like, what is this? Dan, it's just very funny. I guess I have a problem with the word beautiful. Like the idea, I think what he means to say there is, sorry, this didn't make my wee jump. You know what I mean? Like, I love the way that men especially look at anything that they don't find, like straight guys who are like, I'm not attracted to this, means like it's not pretty. And you're like, why does this have anything to do with you?
Yeah, it's a really weird thing with straight guys. You either get, oh, this isn't pretty enough for me, so I don't want it to exist or even be seen, or this is too pretty for me and it's making me uncomfortable and feel weird about my internalized, issues and all these other things. So I'm gonna need to have some other kind of reaction to it. But I think this is one of those excellent examples where you can see cherry picking of these kinds of stories, because I'm not sure how relevant the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue has been for anyone who was born after porn was available on the internet. So like, if there's anything that you're into more, you can find it and then call that beautiful. Jordan Peterson, you don't need to lay off the bacon grease and then hop on social media to express these dumb opinions.
Oh, but he does. And in fact, because of so much of the vitriol that he received, he actually announced hours later, he's leaving Twitter. So here he is writing, the endless flood of vicious insult is really not something that can be experienced anywhere else. I'd like to follow the people I know, but I think the incentive structure of the platform makes it intrinsically and dangerously insane. So he's stopping Twitter. He's sending it over to his people. They're taking his password. The manliest man's man, the alpha male, could not handle the backlash and is now leaving Twitter. And as Hassan writes, sorry, not beautiful, and no amount of authoritarian tolerance is going to change that. With a photo of Jordan looking, oh wow, very, very all meat diet. Very, like that's just chicken gizzard right there. And that's where we have to leave it for this hour. There's more if you're off linear on YouTube. Hang on, we'll be back. All right, on Twitch, Granny Dragon 1. I need some hugs in the hospital for an accidental overdose. Oh my God. Sorry, Granny Dragon. Lots of hugs. Please hang in there. I'm glad you're getting care. Faye Molly, just cast my vote for Fetterman. Looking forward to a win. Okay, all right. I'm sure we all saw those really disgusting text messages from Connor Lamb's team about how Fetterman had a stroke, and you're like, what are you guys doing right now? This is not a good look. Agnostic Sister says, is it me or does Francesca have that pregnancy glow? That's bronzer, but thank you.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.